I do think that when you look at North America, we got the top 8 teams in the North American region. I think most people can agree on that. You might miss TSM and stuff, but they had their chances and they didn't perform at the level that they should do.
Mhm.
I don't think we got the top 8 teams from Europe in this Masters.
Let's move on and talk about European challenges then, because I know that Ryan and Barter to a degree as well have also been following along with these games. But Ryan, can you give us like a primer before we jump in? Because it's been a wacky week in Europe.
Yeah, if you identify it as a European expert, you can take that badge off right now because it doesn't matter anymore. It's such an open region. But I think the one thing that I do want to say, and again, I respect that the European TOs, Freaks for You, have been pretty good at listening to feedback and adjusting us from best of ones to best of 3 games to qualify. But the Challengers close party would be real nice to have double elim. I think is the one thing that I could ask for at this point. If North America for Challengers didn't have, if they just had single elim and not double, we wouldn't have seen Genji nor 100 Thieves qualify for Masters, right? So I do feel that while some of these results are maybe not as unexpected as people may give them credit for, I do think that G2, Fnatic, deserve the right to at least try again and not just have this one game define whether they go through or not. You could say with previous weeks that they've had it, but G2 lost very closely to Defuse and played NIP twice, and NIP looked like the best team in Europe currently, so it's more unlucky for them than them playing super poorly.
I mean, it's just, kind of whack to sit back and think, hey, wait a minute, like G2 and Fnatic are not going to Masters. Is this just a product of the fact that now there's like an open scene, an open qualifier instead of an invite? Like, it seems like, are these two teams outdated in their approach?
This is the beauty of it, man. I think at the same time to have these open qualifiers again. If I want to go back to my old boomer days, sorry. If I went to the CPL in 2000,
a boomer day for you, baby.
Exactly, man. Now that I've reached that 37, But whenever you have those teams flying in from all across the world, from like the Ninjas and Pajamas to the SKs to the Eyeballers to all the teams from Canada and from the States that are now competing in Houston, Texas, you could actually just lose your tournament with 2 BO1s. So it was a double elimination format, but it was this first to 13. You lose one map, you go to lowers, you lose another map, and that's it. But it allows to give a lot of good matches, good upsets, great storylines, and also an opportunity for up and comer teams to get noticed. I think this is great to have that format. Yes, it's sad for the others, but for the main orgs, but it's still cool for those that make it.
I think you can just have those moments though, like no matter what, even if you have a more competitive format, because we saw some of these things over the course of challengers in a lot of different places. Maybe not in NA, but overall, like NA is a little bit more developed, right? So EU is catching up. We're just now figuring out who the NRGs, who the T1s, who those people are in EU, really. Because we haven't had that same level of exposure, that same amount of matches, the same amount of open tournaments. So it's literally just a byproduct of that. We just don't know who those teams are, in my opinion. And I still think you can have those moments where it's like, oh, there's a new up and coming team qualifying through a best of 3 in a double elim format, because you would have had it probably in this challenge.
GX set, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're a really good example. And it's the whole narrative of, are they good enough to stay there, right? I do think that when you look at North America, we got the top 8 teams in the North American region. I think most people can agree on that. You might miss TSM and stuff, but they had their chances and they didn't perform at the level that they should do. I don't think we got the top 8 teams from Europe in this Masters. And I feel like it is kind of a little bit damaging to not have the likes of G2 and Fnatic there, because, viewership is potentially going to be lower because of that. And maybe the scene doesn't get the full support and maybe don't realize how big of a region it could be just based off of that. That's the more hot takey part, I think. But generally speaking, I do think that double elim makes sure that you have the top 8 teams, and if Ballista wins those 2 games, then they've earned their spot, as opposed to just playing really well on the day, right? Can they do it again is the big question.
Arguably, though, TSM would bring a great number of viewership for NA as well, but I do get it if you're comparing like North American viewership versus European viewership, that G2 probably brings a lot into it, and without them, then the numbers are a little bit lower. But I don't think you should discredit TSM also not making it and not bringing the viewership for NA. I think they're one of those great orgs that unfortunately didn't make it through. But actually, you mentioned something here, Mitch, to go back on the G2 thing. Are they in like the same boat? And I'll pass it back to Ryan and to Bala. Are they in the same boat as TSM right now, where they've won every Ignition series in Europe, and now they failed to qualify to Masters? They didn't make it that far into First Strike. Are they going to be in a position where they have to reevaluate their team roster and chemistry and aging composition as well?
I mean, they already did it after First Strike, right? So
Yeah.
like,
I think
G2 is always going to be in that position because that's the type of org that G2 is always going to be in my mind. Like they do it constantly in CS:GO as well. So yes, but I think that is to Ryan's point. I think that's actually going to happen to more teams than just G2. I think we're going to have a huge shakeup that is not necessarily unfair to the players, but kind of hurts, where they're like, oh, I didn't make Masters. Like, okay, now we have to cut half the team, and all of a sudden all the progress that we made is reset. I think that will suck the next time around.
I mean, we have a chance here to maybe take a slightly deeper dive into the games, because I was quite shocked to see. I mean, we can start with the Defuse versus Fnatic series, right? Kicks off on Haven, and it seems like Fnatic they really struggle with a lot of the Ballista versus Fnatic. They really struggle with the retakes. Like the aggression that sort of Ballista sort of applies to them, Fnatic definitely in post-plant scenarios just seem to be really weak. I mean, can you guys shine a little bit of light on maybe like how you take your temperature and look at Fnatic's performance? Because it was a very close series over both maps. Like, make no mistake. But I mean, these aren't opponents that they should be losing to, and they look really shaky at times. Like, post-plant, we just get this mad aggression. The Sky on Haven that we see from Ballista, right? They like, Sky goes in, double like guiding light. They just run in with that utility and just destroy. They have all this utility saved up for the post-plant that seems like Fnatic just cannot deal with.
I think it was funny because me and Bala had like very different opinions on this to begin with, at least. So, what do you think, Bala? Actually,
I think that the Fnatic that we saw there, and I don't even know because I haven't gotten a chance to watch them enough that I can say this is a pattern. But they still had the ideas, right? They had the tactics, but their execution was so wildly, like, it was poor. They were not checking corners. They were not going all. They were switching sites constantly. It didn't feel like they had a full idea of where they wanted to end up towards the end of the game. And eventually they kind of figured out that there was a setup that Ballista was playing, and they just started going towards A. But in either case, that was really where they were lacking, and not necessarily on not having enough utility or blah, blah, blah. They just were not ready for some of the stuff and combination that that Ballista had, in my mind. They still had the tactics, just the execution was really rough.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, you please.
No, I think like one of the things that I thought about Haven specifically, and I know that like even Lofar chipped in and stuff, is just that I feel like we didn't see a huge amount of tactical depth from Ballista. I'm happy to change my tune to an extent because it's easy to say that Fnatic did make a lot of mistakes. They didn't check many angles, but to be fair, Ballista were doing some really weird shit, but it worked out super well. And they even sort of tweeted at me saying, we did this stuff to kind of force the mistakes, right? Having 3 players playing Garage, 2 push out, Fnatic kill us 2 and go, that must be it. Who would play one more person in Garage? And the Killjoy's there like, hiya, and it just burns them down, right? They did that a lot, and they forced a lot of mistakes out of Fnatic, who they themselves would admit that they are terrible when it comes to improvising, the mid-rounds, when they have to change their plan, their strategy based on something new happening. They suck at it. G2, very good at this. They can just bounce off whatever's thrown at them, and they used to be able to, but they can bounce off and improvise and do something really good. Fnatic have never been good at that, so Ballista just ran with it. They just upped the tempo. Fnatic tried to take that space. They tried to face up to them by playing Phoenix themselves, but kind of like I said before, if you're changing your strategy, even by bringing in a Phoenix, which you might not play as much, Domo is okay on the Agent, but I'm pretty sure he's got 10 times the hours on Raze, for example. The fact that you're changing Fnatic just a little bit because of the way that you're playing, Ballista can punish that, and they did.
I remember one round in particular was on Haven, right? Fnatic are attacking. Now, I don't have a clip to illustrate this, so I'm going to use some hand signals, right, to try and, but what we see, like, Mystic, like, it's a Fnatic execute on the B side, right? And they just walk up there, and they, like, dark cover both sides of the B side as they're pushing in. and the smoke up on top of the boxes. Mystic, he teleports on top of the boxes, then teleports back of sight, right? And he gets a kill on someone because like he's just double shrouded stepped into the back of B site. And B side's open, like Fnatic just dominated. Then he uses from the shadows to go back outside the B side to outside garage. Fnatic try to walk into garage and get 2 players killed by the Omen that still sat in garage. Like they have this perfect execute on the B side, and they try and split C and just get rolled. Like so much of like the decision making late in the round confused the heck out of me. Like they were really trying. It was so overcomplicated. They were just really going to such a degree in terms of the strategic complexity that they get caught out by one thing they don't account for. One extra person sat in garage just mowing them down. And I'm like, the early round looks so good, and then they just poop the bed. And a lot of the time it happened like that. And in the retakes, the same thing. When it came time to actually have the aim skill or be ready to just sort of trade kills in a retake scenario, they just got blown over.
It was the same thing that happened. Like they tried that idea multiple times. It was just like, let's take B and then let's fake the spike plant and let's get out. That was like 3 rounds. Fnatic tried to do that. And the problem was that the way that Ballista were playing was kind of, you know, not super playing on B. There was maybe sometimes they had Kareem playing there, but for the most part, their protocol was let's hold on to garage as hard as we can and then potentially flank through gas, which is, you know, pretty normal. So I'm surprised that that was like Fnatic's grand idea when the entire idea is to run back to C, and that's where the people are going to be rotating into no matter what, just because you have to get that garage flank to play that post flank, because otherwise you're just getting shock darted and utility to off the spike to defuse it. So that was really, really weird from Fnatic, but that wasn't the only like idea that went awry. I think Ballista was throwing them off all over the place. They were playing like some super like Batty G, which by the way, potential super future or superstar. Yeah. Like absolutely ridiculous. But he was playing passive on like sometimes they went 2 pre-pool, push A lobby. Let's push through sewers. And then the other rounds they'd just be like, yeah, no, let's leave Batty G in spawn. Like don't even play A. Let's leave him in spawn and he'll just rotate as fast as possible to B or C if they actually hit there, which was really weird.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna move on here. I know people hate it. We don't spend enough time on Europe. I get it, guys, but yeah, we can't be going 3 hours every time. And I love to talk about myself too much, and we just take up too much time. But let's talk about very quickly, right? So the G2 match versus Diffuse. Obviously, first map is super one-sided, right? It's like 13-3 I'm sat there thinking it's over. They're just gonna get smashed. We get to the last map. It's G2 on Bind. I'm like, okay. I mean, surely, yeah, they look pretty crappy in the second map, but surely this is G2. Like Logan's not top frag in every match anymore. Like he's looking like maybe like, that he can't be relied on by the rest of Diffuse. Diffuse start on attack, and they just run the fuck at G2. A team like G2 is used to playing this puggy style. Like they want teams to play like that against them because they always back themselves when it comes to trades, raw aim skill, and taking these ego peaks. But they get pooed on by this style from Diffuse. How does this happen? I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like Takas was just dominating Zeke, no matter where on the map. Takas is pushing into like hookah and just one tapping Zeke every time he tries to peek out. Ridiculous.
I'm not gonna lie. I watched this game on Ascent, and I was like, okay, G2 are playing back normal G2. This is what I expect. I turn the game off. I come back, and they're losing on Bind. I'm like, what the heck? So I rewatch, and I'm just this looks like the same sort of thing that happened at First Strike to them, where they literally are going up against Nisao and Lowell, who are just absolutely dominating with no fear whatsoever, and G2 is playing playing scared almost against them. I don't know if that's what happened, but that's what it felt like to me. It felt like that exact same scenario.
Like Mitch and Lothar, I'd like set this narrative of G2 wanting to be in a chaotic situation and like wanting to play this like deathmatch style, Ryan, and yet they just get rolled. They just get absolutely rolled on that map.
Which is really funny considering Diffuse have always been a fairly like passive team, I suppose. I think that the win condition for them before was like, well, on the defense, we'll push down A long and make sure that the attackers run into where Logan is, because Logan is just going to kill 3 people from hiding within the shrubbery, right? And a good portion of Split was that. It was just kind of like Diffuse, they got how many rounds? 7 rounds in a row on their defense from just basically keeping control of the extremities, not really flirting with mid too much, but keeping an eye on it just in case, and then waiting for the clock to go down. G2 then make an execution, and there's like a crossfire setup of these defuse players just holding areas what they need to go through, and they get killed. Hoppy had a really good series too. Like Defuse typically are a team that dominates the tier 2 to tier 3 teams, but they've never beaten the likes of FPX, NIP, even Team Vitality. They didn't beat in the Red Bull home ground qualifiers. This is the first major upset that they've been able to pull off because they knew exactly how they wanted to play into it. And G2, not for the first time, looked completely lost partway into the game, and kind of they need to read that DDK book when it comes to the fundamentals because they lost out a lot just because of those kind of things that just defuse out tempo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about the OG game because they played like garbage. They just got absolutely rolled, and I can't tell if their team is good or not. I still struggle with it. I started off by being like, these guys suck. Then I was like, wow, these guys are actually really good. Look at Element getting like 30 kills a map on Reyna on Icebox. Haha, these guys are great. And then Razor Edge just, I mean, I think OG won 9 rounds over the course of that series. So like, I don't want to harp on it too much, but it was just sorry. Yeah, just get that out of my face.